Hello, Ipswich. My name is Bill Hart. I'm the Superintendent of Schools for the Ipswich Public Schools. I'm here today to start what I hope will be many programs that are designed to bring the community into the Ipswich Public Schools and understand the goings-on in the schools and some of our initiatives and some of our challenges. We have two segments today. The first segment is to focus on our middle school. Our middle school is doing some wonderful things and also has some challenges that they want to share with the community. The second component of the first program here is an invited guest from the Massachusetts School Building Authority. As hopefully community members know, we have a building project underway, our renovation project for our Winthrop School. And the gentleman is going to come and talk to us a little bit about that process, the design process, the ability for the community to have extensive input into that process, and where we're leading. So hopefully today people enjoy hearing about our middle school and also learning a little bit more about our school building project. So without further ado, I think we'll allow my guests to introduce themselves and just briefly tell the audience about themselves.
My name is Dave Fabrizio. I am the principal of the Ipswich Middle School. It's my third year in this position, and as Dr. Hart said, we have a lot of challenges, but a great many successes we'll talk about today.
My name is Jake Patterson, and I am a 7th grade science and social studies teacher. This is also my third year in the position of teacher. I've been here for 5 or 6 years, though, beyond that. And I also am involved in field hockey and some of the other intramural sports.
My name is Trevor McCrae. I am a 7th grade student in the Ipswich Middle School, and that's really all I can say. I'm not in any position of staff.
Very important guy here. This is why we're all
here, right?
But for you, Trevor. So the first question is, we're now several weeks into the school year, and we've had a good and smooth opening for the middle school. And I'm going to ask, starting with Mr. Fabrizio, to tell us a little bit about the school opening and the successes around that opening.
Yeah, I thought we had a great opening. Despite the many challenges, it's been very positive and very smooth. The teachers, despite the change, have embraced the new schedule, embraced the class sizes. They jumped right into the creative teaching they've been doing for the last few years. It's an exciting place to be. We've added a number of new classes. We've added a number of new activities outside of the classroom to get. Middle school is an experience. It's not just about the classroom. So we've done a number of things outside the classroom as well to bring the kids together and form a sense of community. Would you like me to go into those now, or?
Well, let's just talk a little bit about the opening itself, and then we'll come back to the new and exciting things that are going around.
Surprisingly, with 171 sixth graders coming in, it was as smooth as could be. Kathy McManus, as the principal, did a great job of scheduling before the school year. We had a lot of challenges within that scheduling. She got the kids into class they had to be, and our teachers made great adjustments, and it's just been a positive experience 6 weeks in, and I expect it to stay that way.
Great. Well, Jake, from your point of view as a teacher in the classroom with kids, how did it go?
I actually have to say that I probably had an easier start to the year than most, just because of the position I was in. Last year I taught 6th grade as well as 7th grade, so a lot of the students that I had at the beginning of the year weren't new to me. They weren't new faces, they weren't new names, so it kind of made the transition a little more seamless. But other than that, I mean, I think everyone's really adapting to the new situations. The kids were in good spirits despite the 90+ degree heat for the first week, and it was a great start. I jumped right into some of the things that make middle school, like the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge that we did as a staff and faculty, and the students were all involved in that. So so far I think we've been off to a great start.
Thank you. All right, Trevor, from the students' point of view, how did it go?
Well, I thought it was better than the 6th grade start because they weren't like trapping us in and like carrying us through the whole entire start of the year. Because since it was a new thing, this is our first year in middle school, it was a lot different. But in 7th grade, we just got right into the action. We knew what we were doing. It was a much more smooth experience.
Great, thanks. So I know the middle school is doing some really innovative and exciting things, both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. Maybe if everybody could just share 2 or 3 of those pieces that with the community, because these folks don't get the opportunity like we do to see what's happening with students on a regular basis. So what are some of those things, Dave?
Well, we had to add, because of some cuts, we had to add some new classes to balance off our related arts offerings. And without new staff coming in, we had to be creative. So we offer a number of new classes. Our 6th grade students, as part of transition, they're taking a class called TAG, which is Transition and Growth. And our 2 guidance counselors are teaching that class. And all 6th graders will have that class. And basically it just talks about being in middle school, changing, what changes you go through in life. And they do a lot of team building and confidence building exercises, some community service. Really interesting class. 7th grade, Mrs. Connolly in the library is teaching a media literacy class. So all 7th graders will now be in the library a part of the year, learning how to use different research modes and how to work with the media. And the 8th grade, Officer Smith, Sean Smith, a school resource officer, is teaching a class on just life skills, taking over some of the health curriculum, talks about cyberbullying, drugs and alcohol, relationships from his perspective. And the other 8th graders will have Kathy McMahon there teaching a class on leadership, which is partly leadership. We talk about what it means to be a leader and all the skills you need. And also, we're starting a school store. So this particular group is running the school store. So it's pretty interesting.
Well, I just want to point out to the community, they may not gather this, but this is some really innovative thinking on the part of especially our administrative team. Because all of the people that were just mentioned in those 3 or 4 different course offerings are people who aren't normally in a classroom. These are folks, our guidance folks, which is a great support system. We talk about middle school being the middle age, and the wonder years. And there's all sorts of support students need that, and to proactively try to help students build and grow in the most productive way is important. We talked about some of the cyberbullying pieces. Unfortunately, that's part of our world, and to be proactively helping students understand what their actions could mean and how to support each other. So I just want to point out to the community that these pieces are pieces in reaction to some of the staffing challenges, but it really is making lemonade out of a challenging situation.
So as far as some highlights for 7th grade and the middle school from the teacher perspective, I would say that we're really starting to see that rollout of the technology, and we're really starting to see the impact that can have not only on student learning, but on kind of accessibility for students, and kind of just simplifying and making the whole process a little easier. One way that I've been, myself and a couple of colleagues have been trying to do that is using an application called Google Classroom. Trevor can probably tell you about his experience from the student standpoint, but from the teacher standpoint, it kind of takes that big class size and it makes it a little more feasible to give the feedback that you need to give. Students can upload and submit assignments, and while they're working on them, I can instantaneously type, give feedback, highlight something, comment on it.
So can I just jump in there?
Yeah, absolutely.
So is this happening in the classroom or outside of the classroom, or both?
Both.
So within the classroom of, I know you have large classrooms, so of 28 or 30 students,
Yep.
You can be at your computer and giving feedback to students real time.
Yep.
As they're doing their assignment.
Yeah.
And then of course you can do that
Yep.
after school hours too?
Yep, absolutely. And I found it's a great way to, because when the feedback's there, it's, it's there.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard for them to ignore or forget because they can refer back to it. And it's also nice too because I can look and see, oh, the student really isn't quite understanding.
Mm-hmm.
They need more than just a comment. Let me go over and assist them. But it's just kind of organized and kind of simplified what can be a confusing technological world, I think, with the classroom. It's kind of a classroom website, an information page, an assignment page, all kind of in one.
Yeah. Yeah. So, is there anything that you could say is positively impacting the outcomes, the students' products, work products?
So back to the feedback.
Yeah.
One of the most important things as teaching is timely feedback. For a student to have the feedback in the moment, because if it's 5 years ago, paper and pencil or whatever, I write a note to Trevor, he may look at it, but then it's less likely that he will then go back because time has elapsed. Whereas this is instantaneous.
Yeah.
And even if it's not right in the moment, they can go back and they can see exactly what I'm talking about. I'm not making a blanket comment about the whole writing assignment. I can highlight a specific phrase and say, tell me more. And kind of, it really allows you to be a little more specific in your feedback.
Great. So now, I'm assuming that this medium can be used for students to give students feedback. I don't know if you're doing that yet, but is that a capability of?
Yeah, that is a capability. We're kind of easing our way into it because that's, as far as students giving feedback to other students, that's something we want to make sure we explicitly teach, how to do it and the proper ways, kind of, because along with the cyberbullying in this world, that they need to know what is right and what is wrong. So we don't want to just kind of go give feedback before we explicitly said, this is what we're looking for.
Yeah, no, very, very smart. Well, great. So it sounds like this has some real extensive potential in the
does.
classroom. It sounds like you're off to a really good start.
Yes, absolutely.
Trevor, how about you?
Well, from my point of view, the Google Classroom is really helpful because if we have some edits that our teachers want us to make, we don't have to either hunt down the teacher or they don't have to hunt to us. We can just go on the classroom and see what they've changed, what they've highlighted, what they want us to make different.
Yeah,
It's just a much simpler process.
yeah, yeah.
And in the Google Drive itself, for continuing onto it, it's much better than maybe using a Word document because we always had to save and save and save every time we made a change. It's instant. We don't have to save. It saves itself. And we can easily share it to whatever teacher, what we need to do. We don't have to print it out and bring it and then we maybe waste paper or printer money. And it's just a much simpler process.
Yeah, good. Now, the middle school, a lot of great stuff going on, and want to just say thank you to everybody here for the roles you're playing to make our middle school such a special place. But there's been some challenges with some of our financial cuts we've had to make this year. And I think it's important for the community to understand in tangible ways how those cuts manifested themselves in the middle school and what's the residual impact of some of those cuts. So, Dave, could you tell us?
Well, one of the big changes, we believe in the middle school model, which is team, 14 teacher teams where they get to know the students well and they can meet about the common plan of time, meet about the students all the time. We've lost that true 4-team clusters. We've lost those. We don't have those. For example, in the 6th grade, we have 1 4-person team, 1 2-person team. In 7th grade, we have a 3 and a 4, but then they cross over. We have some cross-clustering in the 8th grade as well. So you don't have that true team feeling. So right away, you lose some of that support for children. Yeah. The second piece, obviously, we've mentioned, and there's no hiding this, is class size. In the 6th grade, it's about 29 across the board, all classes. In the 7th grade, our social studies and science classes are 29 across the board. Average class size, if you're doing any research, 20 is the perfect number for learning. You don't need 18. but 20 is that number. And when you have 29, you know, we're doing a great job. Our teachers are hanging in there, but there's an erosion there, and Jake can speak to this as a teacher. You know, day after day with 29, 29, 29, the work piles up. You just can't give that one-to-one individual attention all the time.
Right.
You know, and it's just, it becomes just, your creativity is sapped a bit because of the number, and it's just not as effective. You know, we're trying the best we can. We're going to give a great product at the end, but it's just not a good number to work with. We have to get that back down to those low 20s and make that effective.
And the other piece too is a physical piece, right? If I understand it correctly, all of our classrooms at the middle high school were built for 22 students.
Yep.
So to be adding 7 more students to that mix is a lot of students in a relatively...
Yeah, Bill, if you don't mind me hopping in, that's actually one of the biggest issues that I've faced. You know, middle schoolers are growing, they're getting bigger. You know, maybe in 6th grade it's a little easier to squeeze that many in a room, but I have tried 3 or 4 different ways, I think it is now, as far as setting up my room. I think I've finally come up with a way, but it's tough because, you know, we all know how middle schoolers are. We all know they need high activity levels. They need to be moving around. And that's definitely been a challenge with the space allotted versus the space needed for students. So yeah, the physical part is just as big of a piece, I'd say, as the other part. It's a huge part of it.
Yeah, no, you can tell, you know, as a superintendent, I'm in dozens of classes over the course of any given month. And you can go into a class, the same teacher's class, with 20 students, and then come back to a class with 29 or 30, and you can feel, it's palpable, the difference in that setting. It makes it very challenging. And not only middle school, but as a district, we're spending a lot of time on what powerful learning looks like. And what powerful learning looks like is, this community has said, is that students are engaged, that actively collaborate on a regular basis. It's more of an inquiry project-based type of curriculum. That demands space. And so, yeah, I can see how challenging that could be.
If I may, another challenge, and Jake brought before about the instant feedback, formative assessment. You know, as kids work on projects, you got to let them know where they are. Yeah. Well, when it's 20, you can get around and keep moving. When there's 29, you can't always get that instant feedback, especially in a performance-based and project-based learning. It takes a little longer to get around and get that instant feedback, so the process slows down a little bit. Yeah. It's just so hard to get around to everybody.
Yeah. Trevor, how about you're in classes? I'm sure some of your classes big?
Yeah, I believe 2 of my classes are around the 29 student, but there's so many, since there's so many people, and there has to be so many desks, and getting around is much harder. And then also the materials that we're using, they're getting lower and lower. Since there's so many people using them, they wear down faster, and then maybe they get lost. And we don't even have the right amount of materials anyway. We don't have 29 scissors for 29 students. You know, and it's hard because when they're doing projects, it's much slower because we have less materials, and it's just a pain.
I like that. It's just a pain. You capture that well. So I guess what we're saying here is we have a group of really talented professionals. Some of the most dedicated people I've worked with, doing marvelous things with kids, even in a challenging environment. And so, you know, as we move forward, you know, we certainly are going to be seeking from the community additional resources for the middle school, but for the schools across the district. And I hope this is helpful for people to understand, you know, folks are doing really good quality work. We have wonderful students like Trevor who deserve to be supported at the levels that are reasonable for a student going through the 7th grade, right, Trevor? But I just you know, any summative or concluding comments you want to share with the community?
I mean, the kids we have at Ipswich are great, and luckily for us, because they're so great, you know, it makes it more palpable or easier to adapt to having these larger class sizes. And you know, we'll continue to do what we need to do to teach these students. But it's definitely I personally like to, create relationships with students, and that's one of the biggest things that I've noticed this year. It's much harder for me to truly know, understand, and develop relationships when there's that many students in the classroom. That's where I see it hurting the most.
Yeah, thanks.
And I see, and I'll echo your words, but we have a tremendous staff. I've been with them for 3 years, and I've never seen people work so hard for what's good for children. And every day I've asked them to be positive, and they come in positive every day, but I can see there's a little wear and tear there, because it's hard. It's a hard job, and they do it with great enthusiasm and love. But we really need, I don't know how long we can keep going on and ask them to keep doing this level of work, and with the results we're getting, it's going to get harder and harder over time. I think Trevor said it best when there's just not a lot of materials there. Well, there's only so much we can keep doing and creative and keep going. Eventually, it's going to slow down a little bit, and it'd be nice to get some relief from those crowds.
No, it's a good point. That what Ipswich has done exceptionally well is put all of its resources into professionals. But by doing that, there's these pieces of materials. Our middle school has a fraction of the budget that other middle schools have. And so you try to spread that budget around to try to support, but I think Trevor captured it to say, geez, it's not unreasonable for every kid to have a pair of scissors, right? So, so those types of things kids deserve. That's the school system and the school we want to build for the future. So I just want to thank my guests here today to start and give the community an idea, a glimpse, a lens into Ipswich Public Schools today and to Ipswich Middle School. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, welcome back, Ipswich. I have as my second guest today, Jack McCarthy. Jack is the Executive Director of the Mass School Building Authority. As many of you probably know, we're in the process of looking at a renovation or rebuild of Winthrop Elementary School, which was built in 1957. Jack's here to answer some of the questions that we are starting to hear from community members about this process. And so I think I'll go right into it.
Sure, go right ahead. I just want to note that school is actually older than I am.
Is that, oh, okay, all right. Not that that's so, it's still old. It's still old. Could you please explain the rigorous process MSBA goes through to select schools to be in this stage of the selection process?
Sure, it's actually set out in statute what we have to look for. The number one thing we look at is safety. If the building's a public safety hazard, you would go right to the top. Yeah. The second thing is overcrowding, which is one of the things that you guys are experiencing in that building. And then it goes down from there, but it's laid out in the statute, and it's also laid out in the statute the process, which is the district files a statement of interest with us. Right. You filed yours in 2013. Well, you filed many years before that too, but 2013 is your class, if you will,
yes,
of how you got chosen. So in your class, we had 201 people filed statements of interest. Mm-hmm. We did 50 accelerated repair projects, which are roofs, windows, boilers, or any combination thereof. Uh-huh. So that's 50. And we only did 16 invites for major projects, right, of which this is. So that's a very small group. So that we had 201. I did 66. So for every 3 SOIs I got in, I had to say no to 2 of them.
Right.
So it's tough to get where you are.
Yes.
And it's really based on how needy is the school. And the other thing we take into consideration is, are they ready? Is the town ready? And we right, think that the school is very needy, number one, and we think the town's ready.
Ready, right. Well, we certainly are ready. It's been a long time coming, and the school is a great little school, wonderful faculty, great student body, supportive parents, but the building is just a tired building and doesn't support the educational needs or the service needs that students have. You mentioned this a little bit in your first statement, but could you talk just maybe a little bit more about how competitive this process really is?
It is And that, you're absolutely right to label it competitive, because it's not an entitlement grant, it's a competitive grant process. And you are, every year, we throw out all the SOIs from the year before, because that's what our statute tells us to do, and we start anew, and we look at all of the new ones. This year we have 227 statements of interest that have been filed. We've invited 51 accelerated repair projects, and now we're going through right now the final process to invite the 12 to 16 that we're going to invite in for major projects. So it's like that every year. We're up at those numbers. So it's a good problem to have for job security, but it's not a great problem to have, because when, you know, the way we're set up is we have a cap of what we can spend.
Right.
This year it's $540 million, and that's MSBA share, not town share. And so that limits us to the number of projects we have. So it's so sad that we have to say no to some very, very deserving projects every year. And so, but it's very competitive.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you. I mean, we're so fortunate to be here. So what are the components associated with the feasibility study?
Sure.
And why are feasibility studies so important?
Okay. So the feasibility study is basically the cornerstone of the rest of the project. Yeah. We work with you, we partner with you, collaborate with you on it. During the feasibility study, you're going to document your education plan. And that's so important, because everything else comes off of that. Yeah. You know, you tell us how you want to deliver your curriculum. When you get your architects on board, they'll design to that. Yeah. And so that's number one, you'll document your ed plan. The second thing you'll do is you'll document what the present conditions are, because we have to have a baseline. Yeah. And that's being done during the preferred schematic. Strike that. That's being done by the preliminary design plan. So preferred schematic is when you take all the alternatives, because we make you just do how do you bring it up to code? We make you do a renovation, and then we make you look at new. And then we look at all those numbers together, right. And that's how we decide what the preferred schematic will be.
Just to review that a little bit. So we don't go into this process saying, here's the way we're going to do this.
Exactly.
We're going to take a look at every single possible way you could do it, and then determine what's the best approach.
The way we've set up the statement of interest process is you tell us what your problems are, and then during the feasibility study, together we figure out how to solve them.
Yeah, great.
But we do, I mean, these feasibility studies are expensive. They're a lot of work. What we've found is we make people do a lot of work up front, because that way there's no surprises down the road, so that when it's time to set the budget, we know that that's a good budget, and we know that there's not going to be overrun. So yeah, usually what happens, Bill, is when I come to the ribbon cutting at the end of the process, when the school's all built, at least one person will stand up in their remarks and say, you know, when MSBA first got in, we said, why are they making us go through all these hoops? What are they doing? And then as the process went along, they realized why it was important to have done that. Yeah. And then they usually, you know, said, we really thought you were a pain in the neck when you got here, but now we're so happy that you made us do that, because it results in a better project.
Right. And I say to people that this is a 50-year decision. Yeah. In terms of the Winthrop School, it's a 50-plus year decision. So if this project is successful, and I believe it will be, that this is something that for 50 years will impact students and the community, because, you know, most likely there'll be a central spot. Schools are always central to a community. It's one of the biggest investments that a community will make. So yeah, it's a big price tag, but well worth it when you think about how many years this decision is going to be impacting Ipswich.
And you know, you need to have your students ready for the 21st century. And if you're in a building that's 56 years old, no matter how great your teachers are, and I'm sure they're great, they're doing the best they can with that building. But there are people in neighboring communities that have better advantages because they have a newer school, and you're having your kids lag behind there.
That's right. That's right. And this is, I've been in a number of different communities. This community takes education extremely seriously and does it exceptionally well. And but it's a huge challenge to try to have kids in classrooms that are undersized, and teachers trying to have active, participatory, inquiry-based type of education without the space.
Just think of the programs that are in your schools right now that they couldn't have imagined were going to be in those schools in 1957. You know, all the special education that you do, all the technology that you want to do, you know, you couldn't have imagined that in your handicaps being in there.
Yeah, no, that's great. So one of the questions people say, well, if Ipswich said, yeah, we're all on board, but we're just going to pass on that high-ticket feasibility study, how would MSBA respond to that?
Well, you wouldn't be getting any grant money from us. I mean, feasibility study is, like I said, it's the cornerstone of the whole project.
Yeah.
And we have a process, and we insist that districts follow that process. And if they choose not to follow that process, then we don't play with you.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. I don't mean to be cold, but it's that simple.
Great, great. And what happens if next week we're going to go in front of voters at a town meeting, and they'll have an opportunity to vote on the funding for the feasibility study. If that funding is rejected, what happens then?
So we actually give you 10 days after a failed vote to present to us a plan of how you think you'll be able to turn that vote around. And you know, normally we'll give you another shot at it, but only one.
Yeah.
And if it comes up and it fails twice, then we shake your hand, we say, sorry, we can't work with you. But as you could see, I have a lot of people that would love to take your place right now.
That's right.
And so the need is plenty. So we don't fool around with, if you can't go with us, then we'll part as friends, but we're going to part, and we're going to go on to the next person.
Okay, thanks, Jack. So we're going to wrap this up now. But if in your experience, if you have any advice for us as a community over the next few months, what might that be?
Well, assuming that your vote passes, then I think what you want to do always is be as open and transparent in the whole process. You have, I don't know if you have the ability to tape all of your building committee meetings and stuff, but if the people understand and see what you're doing, then they have more confidence in it. So the more open and transparent you can be, it's better for everybody.
Great. Well, Jack, here's one of the busiest guys in the state, and to come down here and answer some questions for us speaks volumes about your commitment to this whole process. So I just want to thank you personally and for the citizens of Ipswich.
My pleasure.
Thanks
I mean,
for coming.
the thing that they have, for many people, they're only going to build one school in their lifetime. This is a big decision, and we at the MSBA, we come from towns and cities too, and we understand it. So we know how important it is to you folks, so that's why we're here.
Great. Thanks so much.
Okay.